Your Excellency, David Schenker, thank you so much for this interview and giving us your time. It's a great honor for us to have this interview with you in this time, especially in this time, this big tense here in Iraq, in the region, in the whole Middle East.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here with you, to be in Iraq, and to be in the Kurdish regional government. So thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that. Right. I would like to ask you about the situation now. Your visit to Erbil coincides with the regional environment full of tension and also crisis. Okay. How do you assess the current situation in Iraq in general and also in Kurdistan in particular?
Well, listen, it's no secret there is great tension in Iraq right now. Just we saw a day and a half ago, dozen, 15, 20 missiles fly into your country from Iran, targeting an Iraqi military base. We are all very lucky that there were no casualties. But it's a remarkable violation of sovereignty. Before this, we saw, of course, the attack on another Iraqi military base by the Iranian-backed militia Kataib Hezbollah that killed an American, that wounded several Iraqis. We'd seen earlier, of course, other attacks by Kataib Hezbollah and other militia on Iraqi military bases that have killed Iraqi citizens, and my condolences go out to those families of the Iraqis. This is just an intolerable situation. This is followed up by, of course, U.S. defensive action to protect ourselves. The government of Iraq needed to do more to defend and protect coalition forces on the ground. That was not done, and of course we were targeted more than a dozen times in a 2-month period, finally one resulting in the death of an American. We responded by targeting those who targeted us with 5 airstrikes. The next day, the government of Iran organized the storming of an American embassy in Baghdad that almost ended in tragedy, really, because the government of Iraq did not send troops under its international obligations to protect the U.S. compound until very late in the day. So then we saw the strike on Qasem Soleimani and Mohandas, and another defensive strike to protect the U.S. presence and the coalition presence in the region. So here we are. It's an incredibly tense situation, and of course the Iranian missile strike against Iraq. Here we are. We're hoping for a de-escalation with Iran in the region, but of course the ball is in Iran's court. They can choose to escalate further by having their proxy groups like Kataib Hezbollah, Sab al-Haq, attack American interests in Iraq. We are here still at the invitation of the Iraqi government, fighting ISIS. And if they attack us.
Okay. What's the U.S. expectation from the government of Iraq and also the KRG regarding the current development of crisis, and especially with United States?
Well, at a minimum, we'd expect from the government of Iraq to meet its international obligations to protect our diplomatic facilities. That's number one. Also, to protect coalition forces while they're operating against ISIS at the invitation of the Iraqi government. We have a partnership, a deep partnership with the government of Iraq, right? We have established a coalition of 75 nations that has defeated ISIS and continues to ensure the enduring defeat of ISIS. We have contributed billions of dollars, more than $1 billion a year, to support the Iraqi military and the counterterrorism forces. We have a close relationship with them. We support Iraq's major weapons systems, its F-16s and otherwise. We have a relationship with the KRG, with the Peshmerga. We work side by side with them as well on counterterrorism and security assistance. So we would expect this partnership to continue.
All right. Okay. Let us ask you about the role of USA. What's the role of USA? Would be to escalate the current tension between United States and Iran? What are your expectations of that?
Well, you heard the president speak after the strike. This was a de-escalatory speech. Once again, the ball is in Iran's court. We are looking for a de-escalation. We do not want a war, but neither will we tolerate being attacked by Iran or its proxies here or anywhere else in the region.
But do you expect this tension to be escalated by Iran? Do you expect that?
I don't want to talk hypothetical.
As you say, that the ball in Iran field.
Yeah, we are here to support the sovereignty of the government of Iraq. I must say, it is striking to hear some Iraqis talk about a violation of Iraqi sovereignty. I've heard this before during the core vote, that somehow our defense of ourselves, striking Kataib Hezbollah or Qasem Soleimani or others, was a violation of Iraqi sovereignty, when I have not heard one Iraqi official talk about the shelling, firing rockets or missiles against Iraqi military bases by Iranian-backed militia as a violation of Iraqi sovereignty. The sending of more than a dozen missiles into Iraq from Iran as a violation somehow of Iraqi sovereignty. We, unlike Qasem Soleimani, weren't in Baghdad telling the government of Iraq who their next prime minister should be.
All right.
Right? We are supporting the sovereignty of Iraq. We are the largest donor to demining. We've demined over 86 million square meters of Iraqi land. We are the largest donor to stabilization. We've rehabilitated more than 500 schools, 100 health centers, 50 water treatment plants. Across the board, we've given more than $2.6 billion in assistance, including food, water, medicine, and shelter since 2014 to Iraq. How many billions have you gotten from Iran?
All right. None.
Oh, okay, and who's telling you who your next prime minister should be?
Okay.
Not the United States.
Okay, it's beautiful. All right. Let me come to the last resolution of the Iraqi Parliament, when they decided in a dramatic decision to make all the foreign troops to go out of Iraq. What do you say about that?
Well, I think it's somewhat disappointing, given that all we've done for Iraq. But nonetheless, I've been reading in the Kurdish press, especially, that there were only some 130 members of parliament. Is that true? Is that your understanding?
Yes. So
who actually showed up for a vote. I don't quite understand how the number turned into 180, but let's put that aside for a minute. This was a resolution, non-binding resolution, and we'll look forward to our dialogue with the Iraqi government, exactly what this means. We have an ongoing dialogue with the Iraqi government about the nature of our bilateral relationship, and we'll continue to pursue that.
Okay. Let me ask you openly about the United States commitment towards Iraq, in particular, fighting terror and providing support to the Iraqi forces and Peshmerga. What's your commitment about that?
Well,
after
like
this resolution from the Parliament?
Well, like I said, in the last 4 years, we've given nearly $5.5 billion to the Iraqi military and counterterrorism forces. We have thousands of troops here to work with you. Just in 2019 alone, we did 4,000 counter-ISIS operations in Iraq. Amazingly, and I'm sure you know, if the United States leaves Iraq, all the coalition partners will leave Iraq. We are not leaving Iraq. We are here at the invitation of the government of Iraq. We are in a dialogue with the government of Iraq.
Okay.
And my expectation is that will continue.
Okay. Right. An open question. Is the U.S. troops going to stay in Iraq, or living in
I
Iraq?
just answered the question.
Good. So you are going to stay?
I just answered the
Yeah,
question.
that's it. Let me ask you about your relationship with especially in this crisis, what would happen in the region, your relationship with the KRG now and in the future. What do you expect?
KRG has been an excellent partner for the United States in the war against terrorism. We're doing a lot of humanitarian work here. We provide all kinds of economic support, military support for the Peshmerga. You are great partners to the United States. We appreciate the statements of President Barzani about condemning the attack on the U.S. Embassy by these Iranian-backed forces. So we consider the KRG to be an excellent partner, and my meetings today affirm that.
So you are looking at the Kurdish people as a real partner for United States?
Absolutely.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, right. Let us come to the new or the next cabinet of Iraqi government. What do you expect of the new cabinet in Iraq? The government of Iraq, the new cabinet. What's your expectation?
Well, listen, we're not telling the government of Iraq. We're not choosing who the next prime minister is, what the parliament is. We have aspirations for Iraq, though. We have aspirations for a sovereign Iraq, an Iraq that exerts its own sovereignty, that is not a satellite state of Iran. And so we would hope that the Iraqi people choose somebody who is an Iraqi patriot, an Iraqi nationalist, to be their prime minister and to be in their government.
I hope so. Let me come to the last question, if you don't mind, please. What do you like to say about the continuous of protesters in Iraq?
Listen, it has been our view, I think consistently since day one when we saw these protests emerge, that the demands of these protesters are legitimate, demands for good governance, for an end to corruption, for service provision. These are all legitimate. We support them. Also, an end to Iran dominating the decision-making process. But the first three is really what we're focused on. These are legitimate, and they should inform what the government does. I think it's worth noting that these protesters have been protesting peacefully and have been brutally repressed by forces loyal to Iran under the instruction of Qasem Soleimani, who killed over 400 innocent Iraqis. And their graves, by the way, I understand, were later desecrated by these same pro-Iranian forces. This is really unacceptable. And then going beyond that, I think it's worth noting that these protesters, since October, tried to cross the May 14th bridge to go into the international zone so they could protest outside of their ministries, some freedom of expression, and they were brutally repressed. Many were killed. Tear gas canisters were fired into their heads. And yet, on December 31st, Qata'at Hezbollah tried to come across that bridge and walked right across without a problem. And this will tell you everything you need to know about Iran's unproductive and really negative role in Iraq. So we support the protesters. I understand a protest is going to occur once again this Friday. It is our expectation that the government of Iraq will protect these protesters who are protesting nonviolently. I think that is their right, and that is the obligation of the government of Iraq.
Okay. Your Excellency, thank you very, very much for this interview and give us your time. We appreciate that. Of course, I have too many other questions, but I'm not going to take your time anymore. But thank you very, very much for this interview.
My pleasure.